so this is not too important. We're going to go through. Okay, so this was the first slide, just showing what we're going to look at. So where we were was over here. 3 questions. So just maybe tell me if the are you seeing how we look at money? And there's First Timothy, and it says, "Does my pursuit of money interfere with obeying God?"
Yes, that's what we can see.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. Right, so these are 3 questions we can ask just to see whether our intentions and motives for having money or wanting more money is good or not good. So the first one is, does my pursuit of money interfere with obeying God? The second, do I always look for something that will benefit me financially, regardless of how it affects others? When it comes to helping others, am I more concerned with what my cost will be, or instead of allowing myself to be moved by compassion? So those questions, the first one is very important. Like, am I going to be serving God, or am I going to be running after money and serving money as my master? The second one, I'm sure we know of people like this, where they're always looking of, how can it benefit me financially? How am I best going to be the best out of this situation? I'm just thinking of some people in business where they have a boss who's just so consumed with, how am I going to make more money, and they don't even treat their staff very well. So regardless of how it's affecting other people, they just want to be the ones making the money. When it comes to helping others, again, I know of many people who will, out of their pocket, not have enough money for themselves to buy food for themselves, but they will help buy food for somebody else who might be in a worse off situation. So there's many things to look at. It's definitely not bad bad to have a lot of money. It depends what you do with it or how you get it. So Ecclesiastes 5 verse 10, he who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves wealth with his income. This also is vanity. And in the same book, Ecclesiastes 4 verse 4, and I saw that all toil and all achievement spring from one person's envy of another. This too is meaningless, chasing after the wind. So we need to know that our self-worth is not dependent on how much money you have, or if you have a better car or a better home or better clothes or go on better vacations than other people. It doesn't make you a better person or make them less of a person if they don't have what you have. That's where the 10th commandment, I think, comes in very strongly, is we mustn't look at our neighbors. Do not covet. Don't look at other people and think, oh, if only I had that, or if only I also could do that, I would feel better or be a better person. Henry and I were just talking about the other day, we have many friends who go on these vacations overseas. We're like, how on earth do they save enough money to go on those vacations? And then we found out later they were still paying back that vacation 3 or 4 months later because they actually used their credit cards to pay for that vacation. So it's very, very dangerous to look at other people and see what they have and then think that you're not good enough because you don't have that either. The way they have come by having that is a different way. So everyone needs to decide for themselves if they like to live that way, or if they want to rather save up and then have things or do things. So important to remember, you return to the grave just as you came into this world. So Amberly was born not too long ago, and when she was born, she definitely didn't come with any extra clothing or extra bags of food with her, or a car that she might drive one day. It didn't come with her. So everything that we make or get in this world that is of a worldly manner, yes, we do need some of those things, but not to get hooked on those to make you feel better or worse off for having those kind of things. Because ultimately one day when you do die, you don't get to take any of that with you anyway. In Matthew 6 verse 24, no one can serve 2 masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. So you cannot serve God and money. So we want to have God ultimately as our master. And in Philippians 4 verse 19, but my God shall supply all you need according to his riches in glory by Christ Jesus. And in 2 Corinthians 9 verse 8, and God is able to bless you abundantly, so that in all things at all times, having all that you need, you will abound in every good work. So important there, it's he will supply everything you need, not necessarily everything that you want. So when it comes to earning money, Proverbs 30 verse 8 to 9, give me neither poverty nor riches, but give me only my daily bread. Otherwise, I may have too much and disown you and say, who is the Lord? Or I may become poor and steal, and so dishonor the name of my God. So you don't want to earn too much and forget God, and you don't want to earn too little and then have to steal and displease God. So it's important that we live within our means so that what we have is enough. God knows your situation, and he will provide you all that you need in that time of your life. So just by saying, don't make me rich or don't give me too much, that doesn't mean you should have nothing, because some people help a lot of people. So they will be needing a lot more. So again, it's just important, what are you going to do with it once you've now earned it? Whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men. So there are times when you're working in God's vineyard and you're receiving no monetary rewards. In these cases, you're definitely working for the Lord and not for men, because it's everything to please God. But even in cases when you are working for a cash reward or getting a salary, make sure that you're working ultimately to please God, and that whatever you are doing, he will be pleased with what you are doing, and not trying to please a person, because people can very quickly disappoint. And if you are always trying to please people, they will change, and it's very difficult to then please people. We want to just be pleasing God. Ecclesiastes 9 verse 10, whatever your hand finds in the realm of the dead, where you are going, there is neither working, nor planning, nor knowledge, nor wisdom. So right now, while we are alive, we want to work, and we want to work with all our might, that we can make a difference to our family and our neighbors. Because one day when we pass away, it's too late. In Proverbs 13 verse 4, the second half of that verse, the desires of the diligent are fully satisfied. Proverbs 10 verse 4, lazy hands make for poverty, but diligent hands bring wealth. So obviously, to earn something, you cannot be lazy. You cannot sit there and say, I have no money, but you're not willing to at least work for it. There's a lot of verses in the Proverbs where it shows that the lazy person, it ends in poverty the whole time. So you need to work diligently. If we look at saving appropriately, Proverbs 6 verse 6, verses 6 to 11, go to the ant, you sluggard, consider its ways and be wise. It has no commander, no overseer or ruler, yet it stores its provisions in summer and gathers its food at harvest. How long will you lie there, you sluggard? When will you get up from your sleep? A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come on you like a thief, and scarcity like an armed man. We, in the same way, should take control of and be smart and be the master of our money and save for the future. You cannot save yourself to wealth, like they always say, but you can save some money that in case something does happen, you do have money stored away. Proverbs 21:20, the wise store up choice food and olive oil, but fools gulp theirs down. So in the olden days, like that would be the like if you had olive oil and you had food stored, that would be like storing up your money. Like nowadays you have banks where you can put money in, or you can have it somewhere, like draw money and keep it safe. But the point of the verse is that you must store it up, some of it. You mustn't just use it because now I've got a lot today, I use it all up, and 2 weeks later I've got nothing and now I've got a problem. So when things are going well, keep something for the future and don't use it all up. The wise save, the foolish spend. Remember the story of Joseph and how he saved so many lives by storing up or saving grain when there was none. And if we read that story in Genesis 41 verses 46 to 49, it's all about Joseph, where he was put into a rulership position by Pharaoh, and he put away bits and pieces every month for those 7 years that it was going well. Some people looked at him crazy and think like, you've got so much already, like surely we can now just stop saving and just enjoy it. But he knew he had to save up. So then he was able to actually save a lot of people's lives, his family included, when there was nothing for 7 years. And we don't know always how long. We might be going through a stretch now where we feel we don't have enough, and you like trying to just make it by. I mean, COVID hasn't been very good to many people, but God, there has to be a time when it changes over again. So we must just go through the times that are tough, make sure we just have money, or make sure we can get the necessities. And then later on, life will become like you'll be able to have that room to breathe again. So once you have saved up some money, you might find people start asking you for help good with their money to store up for themselves. So they might ask you for money, or they might ask you to sign surety for them to owe other people money. And this is something we've personally had some experience with, and we went to the Bible to see what it says about this. So Proverbs 6 verses 1 to 5, my son, if you have put up security for your neighbor, if you have shaken hands in pledge for a stranger, you have been trapped by what you said, ensnared by the words of your mouth. So do this, my son, to free yourself, since you have fallen into your neighbor's hands. Go to the point of exhaustion and give your neighbor no rest. Whoever puts up security for a stranger will surely suffer, but whoever refuses to shake hands in a pledge is safe. Again in Proverbs 20:16, take the garment of one who puts up security for a stranger. Hold it in a pledge if it is done for an outsider. And Proverbs 22 verse 26 to 27, do not be one who shakes hands in pledge or puts up security for debts. If you lack the means to pay, your very bed will be snatched from underneath you. We're going to look at this more closely in detail, but just if you have signed security for somebody, or somebody else owes money to someone and you're the one that they're going to come to ask you to pay if that person's not paying, you are the one that has been trapped, and you are going to suffer, and you will even lose things. You could even lose your life or lose your freedom because you're the one that they're going to come for to get that paid from. So you want to go to the point of exhaustion to get yourself out of the situation, that you won't be trapped and you won't be in a time of in a problematic situation when the other person cannot pay. So if we look at investing wisely, Proverbs 13 verse 11, dishonest money dwindles away, but whoever gathers money little by little makes it grow. So be careful for ways to make money fast or dishonestly. If we think of the lottery, it's important to change the way that we think of how we make money and how we use money, because if we make money very fast, we usually haven't got the mindset of how to actually keep that money or make it work for us. And the lottery is a very good example. Most people that have won the lotto, yes, it might go good with them for a year or 2 years, but then they've lost the money within 2 years, and it's a lot of money. And it's just because the way that they have made it, it wasn't little bit by little bit learning more as you grow. They just made it overnight and then spent it again, literally overnight. Ecclesiastes 11 verse 1 to 2. Ship your grain across the sea. After many days, you may receive a return. Invest in 7 ventures. Yes, in 8. You do not know what disaster may come upon the land. So when you are investing, you want to diversify where you have your money. You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, because if that one basket gets crushed, all your eggs are gone, instead of having them in many different places that you can continue to live off some of the other places if something happens to one. In Proverbs 31 verse 16, when we look at the virtuous woman, she considers a field and buys it. With the fruit of her hands, she plants a vineyard. So she invests in land to provide for her family in the future, and she considers it. She looks at it, thinking wisely where she should put it, not just quickly throwing her money around, which she has worked hard to get. In Luke 14, verse 28 to 30, for which of you, desiring to build a tower, does not first sit down and count the cost, whether he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, to finish, all who sees it begin to mock him, saying, this man began to build and was not able to finish. So when we're looking at investing and putting our money somewhere, we do your homework and due diligence. Okay, so the next one is to give generously. In Acts 20, verse 35, it is more blessed to give than to receive. When we earn money, it feels great, but it feels even better when you can use that money to help others. And those who have done this, they will know that it is amazing to be able to help other people. We want to give back to God first. If we think of tithing, Proverbs 3, verse 9, honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruits of your crops. Then your barns will be full to overflowing, and your vats will brim over with new wine. It does not mean that the more you give, the more you will get back, but rather the more that you give your money to doing God's will, the more He will use you more often to continue helping others. There's no set amount you should be giving. For example, if you look at the widow mentioned in Mark 12, she only gave 2 small copper coins, but it was everything that she had. Where the rich people put larger amounts of money, but still had lots to live off of. So give what you can as you know your financial situation. So I think it's to give 1/10 to God. Basically just, but it does make a difference whether if you, like this lady, have only 2 coins and you give everything. That is way more than someone who, let's say, maybe has 20,000 and gives 2,000. We mustn't give and then look at other people and be like, oh, but I gave this much and you only gave that much. It is what you have to give, but you want to give to God first. I always think of the money that we have been given, or the salary that we get. It's a blessing from God. He's entrusting me with that money to do good and to honor His name as well at the end of it. 2 Corinthians 9 verse 7, each of you should give what you have decided in your heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. And then you can help your fellow brothers and sisters. In Proverbs 3 verse 28, do not say to your neighbor, come back tomorrow and I'll give it to you, when you already have it with you. So you want to help whenever you can. And in Philemon 1 verse 18, this is where Paul pays off Onesimus's debt. If he has done you any wrong or owes you anything, charge it to me. So he pays off Onesimus's debt. We're going to look at that in the next slide or two. But sometimes it's right to help your fellow brother or sister to pay their debt, or help find ways to get money to help them pay off their own debt. In Psalms 37:21, the wicked borrow and don't pay back, but the righteous show mercy and give. So we should help and give when we can and be merciful. We're going to look at a parable of the unforgiving servant, which is in Matthew 18 verses 21 to 35. And and I'm actually just quickly going to read that 21 to 35. Okay. Then Peter came to him and said, Lord, how often shall my brother or sister sin against me and I forgive him? Up to 7 times. Then Jesus said to him, I do not say to you up to 7 times, but up to 70 times 7. Therefore, the kingdom of heaven is like a certain king who wanted to settle accounts with his servants. And when he had begun to settle the accounts, one was brought to him who owed him 10,000 talents. But as he was not able to pay, his master commanded that he be sold with his wife and children, and all that he had, and that payment be made. The servant therefore fell down before him, saying, Master, have patience with me, and I will pay you all. Then the master of that servant was moved with compassion, released him, and forgave him his debt. But that servant went out and found one of his fellow servants. He laid his hands on him and took him by the throat, saying, Pay me what you owe. So his fellow servant fell down at his feet and begged him, saying, Have patience with me, and I will pay you everything. And he would not, but went and threw him into prison till he should pay the debt. So when his fellow servants saw what he had been done, they were very grieved, and came and told the master all that had been done. Then his master, after he had called him, said to him, You wicked servant, I forgave you all the debt because you begged me. Should you not also have compassion on your fellow servant, just as I had pity on you? And his master was angry and delivered should pay all that was due. Will do to you if each of you from his heart does not forgive his brother's trespasses. So just out of that story, the servant who was shown mercy, who then went and didn't show his fellow servant mercy, ended up in a much worse situation. He now was being tortured until that money was being paid. So if we are shown mercy by anybody, and I know there's a much greater spiritual lesson here than just the monetary part that we are looking at, but if we are shown mercy, we shouldn't be greedy and then go and not show mercy to others who might owe us something as well. So radical generosity, if we look at God's economy, in Deuteronomy 15 verses 1 to 3, and at the end of every 7 years, you must cancel all debts. This is how it should be done. Every creditor shall cancel any loan they have made to a fellow Israelite. They shall not require payments from anyone among their own people, because the Lord's time for canceling debts has been proclaimed. You may require payments from foreigners, but you must cancel any debt your fellow Israelite owes you. So just how amazing is that every 7 years, if you had owed your fellow brother or sister any money, they would cancel it for you, and you would actually return to your own property as well, that was given to you. So every 7 years, your debt is cancelled. The year of Jubilee, you can start on a clean slate. So it just shows how God doesn't want us to be enslaved to anybody or owe anyone anything. You also were to borrow without interest to your fellow Israelites. This is something we don't get today. If you borrow money from a bank or most places, when you pay it back, there's interest that is added on top of that. But we as fellow brothers and sisters, we should, when we can, if we are helping out somebody financially, not charge interest, so that we are not letting them be in a worse situation. They must just pay back what they owe us. To people of other nations, though, they could lend and charge interest. So in Nehemiah 10 verse 31, every 7th year we will forego working the land and will cancel all debts. So if we just further on in Deuteronomy 15, look at verse 10, give generously to them, and do so without a grudging heart. Then, because of this, the Lord your God will bless you in all your work and in everything you put your hand to. So, like I mentioned earlier, that the money that we make is a blessing from God. So we should be thinking on how best can I use this money to do God's will in my life. And again, looking at the virtuous woman, she opens her arms to the poor and extends her hands to the needy. So we learn from her again that we should take care of the poor and the needy. So lastly then, to spend moderately. I like this where it says, pray before you pay. Is it really something that you need? If you were to pray for it, would it be something that God would give you? And then a budget is people telling their money where to go instead of wondering where their money went. So when you are spending, it is definitely smart to have a budget that you just know where your money is going and you tell it where to go, that it goes to important things. Otherwise, that money will be spent anyway. So Deuteronomy 28 verse 12, the Lord will open the heavens, the storehouse of his bounty, to send rain on your land in season and to bless all the work of your hands. You will lend to many nations, but you will borrow from none. So you want to spend within your means. Do not borrow money from other people because God gives you more than you need. And financial freedom comes from having an attitude of gratitude, which I know Landi is talking on later, not monetary or anything, but her talk is about being grateful. When you are grateful for what you have and not wanting more and more, then you will be able to obtain financial freedom much easier because you will be happy with what you have and not need anything else. So you want to cut back on unnecessary expenses. In Proverbs 21 verse 17, whoever loves pleasure will become poor. Whoever loves wine and olive oil will never be rich. So most people use their credit cards to buy pleasurable items that they can't necessarily afford, and this leads them to be a slave to money and to people that they lend from. So a question to ask yourself before buying something is it really a necessity? And anyone who's listening can definitely ask Henry, whenever there's something in our house that I feel is not a necessity, it goes onto Marketplace and it gets sold. So Henry definitely hides a lot of his goods away, which I feel is not a necessity to have. But it's usually those things that are not a necessity that we use our credit cards or use money we don't have to buy, which again just goes back to the first point where your self-worth is not dependent on things that you have, but rather the person that you are. So Proverbs 22 verse 7, the rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is the slave to the lender. Again, Deuteronomy 28 verse 44, they will lend to you, but you will not lend to them. They will be the head and you will be the tail. So again, the whole time, if you're owing people money, you are always a slave to them. Psalm 109 verse 11, may a creditor seize all he has. May strangers plunder the fruits of his labor. So we're going to quickly just look at how people will stop at nothing to get back what is now a debt collector, and it's scary what they go through to get people to pay. So lastly, others were saying we are mortgaging our fields, our vineyards, and our homes to get grain during the famine. So when you have debt, you are borrowing from your future self, who, when you cannot repay, will lose your possessions and even worse, your freedom or your life. So all just to be able to survive and buy food again, which is what happened here. They just wanted to get grain during the famine, but they had to give away their fields and things because they didn't pay it. It wasn't theirs. Romans 13 verse 8, let no debt remain outstanding, except the continuing debt to love one another, for whoever loves others has fulfilled the law. So this is the only debt we should have, is to continuously love one another. And I'm going to end off just to look at the following story and see what we can learn in and apply in our own lives. It's the story of the widow in 2 Kings 4 verses 1 to 7, the widow that had to get oil. Let's read it and then we'll quickly expand. The wife of a man from the company of the prophets cried out to Elisha, "Your servant, my husband, is dead, and you know that he revered the Lord. But now his creditor is coming to take my 2 boys, as his slaves." Elisha replied to her, "How can I help you? Tell me, what do you have in your house?" So again, we can see here that this lady is frightened and afraid. They owe this creditor, and they want to come and take her children to be slaves. So Elisha, instead of just saying, "Okay, how much do you owe? Let me pay it for you," says, how can I help you? This lady had to show some commitment from her side to paying off the debt, so this situation wouldn't happen again. So the same in our lives. If someone comes and asks you to help them, let's see what you have in your house. What can we sell that we can help you make that money to pay your debt? So he asks her, what does she have in her home that she can sell to make money to pay off the debt? "Your servant has nothing there at all," she said, "except a small jar of olive oil." So no matter how small or little money you have to start paying towards the debt, the key is to start paying. So Elisha said, "Go around and ask all your neighbors for empty jars. Don't ask for just a few. Then go inside and shut the door behind you and your sons. Pour oil into all the jars, and as each is filled, put it to one side." She left him and shut the door behind her and her sons. They brought the jars to her, so she kept pouring. When all the jars were full, she said to her son, "Bring me another." But he replied, "There is not a jar left." Then the oil stopped flowing. So she and her sons had to work to get the debts paid off. They didn't just let Elisha pay them out and pay the debt. In this way, she learned to not get themselves in a similar situation in the future. She went and told the man of God and he said to her, "Go sell the oil and pay your debts." So they sold everything that they had. Remember, this is all she had in her house, was a small jar of oil. So they increased it, made more oil. Now they went and sold everything they had in their house and they paid off their debt. What a great feeling it is as well when you owe no one anything anymore. She paid off all her debts and they worked hard to get that done. "You and your sons can live off what is left," Elisha said. So Elisha shows mercy to her and her sons, letting them keep all of the profit to live off of, giving them a head start to their future. So similarly with us, if we've helped someone sell things to pay off their debt, it's not like, "Oh, I had the idea, give me some of the money." No, it was their hard work. They've now paid off their debt. This is now a head start for them to continue going forward. So that was what I could get from my study in looking at the Bible on money and what we can do with it and how we should use it to best in God's way. So I don't know if there's any questions or comments. Thanks, Liezl. That was very comprehensive and very deep lessons that you're sharing there with us. I, as my family knows,